You know his words will get you farther than the film will ever go. Give him a moment of your time, he'll tell you what's wrong with the show. He knows what's good, what's bad, what's really bad. His face is just a sign. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
If you've seen my intro video about Minority Report, then you already know where I stand as to why I believe this movie is awful. Consider that my opening statement. And now let me get right to my case. I don't want to waste any more time on this piece of shit than I already have to. Every single element of this film, from its retard plot, to its retard characters, to its retard premise, sucks. So let me begin first with the premise itself. I want to say in the first place that in science fiction, I'm used to having to accept ridiculous premises every now and again. In fact, part of the beauty of science fiction is that you don't always have to make sense with regard to your premise. You can be creative on all sides. But the premise of this movie just goes too far. This is not a creative idea. It is the most ludicrous situation I have ever had to accept in science fiction, and this coming from someone who has actually seen Battlefield Earth. It's not just that it's unbelievable, and it's not just that it's silly. The basic premise of this film is such an assault on common sense that it's impossible for me to get past. That in and of itself might not have been enough to ruin the film entirely, but I'll say this. With a premise that relies so heavily on this retard logic, every other aspect of the film would have had to be a fucking groundbreaking masterpiece in order for it to be overlooked. As it turns out, every other element of the film is as retarded as what you are about to see. The year is 2054. The place, Washington, D.C. The situation, this. An experimental police force known as pre-crime, has been in place for 6 years. This police force is localized entirely within Washington, D.C. Pre-crime is in the business of stopping murders before they happen. You see, these people have access to 3 mutated humans known as precogs who can see the future. These visions are translated onto display screens for pre-crime to view. They also give names of the victims and perpetrators as well as the time of the murders, but all the other details of the future crimes have to be deduced by the officers from bits and pieces they have on the monitor. The success rate of this process has apparently been pretty good, as DC has been essentially murder-free for 6 years, and murders are now rarely premeditated. The majority of murders now being crimes of passion that are spontaneous and allow for less time for pre-crime to stop them. We open with one such event. A man is apparently going to murder his wife in a jealous rage. Our main character, John Anderton, and the rest of preschool attempt to track him down. They eventually zero in on his location and get underway. This is where the film transfers from a stupid premise to a stupid scene overall, as the officers dressed in full-on SWAT gear and fly off in an armored tank to take down a man who they know is armed only with a pair of scissors. Anderton is the first to find the house and stops the man from killing his wife. But that's just not stupid enough for our illustrious writers, so we still have to see a few dumbasses unnecessarily crash through the ceiling to apprehend the already apprehended man. Once they have him in their custody, Anderton explains the situation.
Positive for Howard Marks. Mr. Marks, by mandate of the District of Columbia Pre-Crime Division, I'm placing you under arrest for the future murder of Sarah Marks and Donald Dubin. Take place today, April 22nd, at 0800 hours, 4 minutes. No.
He's under arrest for the future murder of his wife. See, because the crime this man is guilty of is so new, it requires a whole new title to explain it. Oh wait, I'm sorry. It's not that the crime he's committed is new, it's that the premise for this film has Down syndrome. It may surprise, shock, stun, and amaze you to learn that there is actually a word for what this man is guilty of. There is actually already a set of potential penalties for what this man is guilty of. There is already a legal term for what this man is guilty of. It's called attempted murder. That's all this is. For the purposes of these people's experiment, that's all this needs to be. What is the point of calling this something entirely new? John Anderton later explains.
Look, I'm not with the ACLU on this, Jeff. But let's not kid ourselves. We are arresting individuals who have broken no law.
But they will. The commission of the crime itself is absolute metaphysics. The precogs see the future, and they're never wrong.
But it's not the future if you stop it. Isn't that a fundamental paradox?
Yes, it is. You're talking about predetermination, which happens all the time. Why'd you catch that?
Because it was gonna fall.
You're certain?
Yeah.
But it didn't fall. You caught it. The fact that you prevented it from happening doesn't change the fact that it was going to happen.
Hey, moron! Fucking moron! Let's continue with that logic to its common sense conclusion. Yes, the fact that you prevented it from happening does not change the fact that it was going to happen. But the fact that it was going to happen doesn't change the fact that it didn't happen. The ball, in fact, did not fall. But by your retard logic, if you came into this guy's house and rolled the ball towards his hardwood floor and he caught it, he could still sue you for damage to the floor that he fucking prevented. Preventing crime is not new. It is not something that needs to be experimented with. Crime prevention happens all the time. Well, maybe not all the time, but it is not a new component in what they're experimenting with here. The only difference between this and regular crime prevention is that they have foreknowledge of the crime that is going to take place. Now, that is technically, not even technically, that is literally no different than if I overhear a murder being plotted in advance and later arrive on the scene to stop it. Now, some of you may say, well, actually, there's a big difference, Matthew. Because of the precog's ability to see the future, then there is no question of this man's guilt. The man was going to kill his wife. Well, guess what? If the murderer that I stopped was called onto the witness stand, he could say in front of 1,000 jury members, yeah, if Matthew hadn't stopped me, I would have butchered the guy and his wife and shot the dog for my own amusement, and they could still only get him on attempted murder because he didn't actually kill anyone! Putting this in trial terms, even if we assume that the precog's visions are admissible in court, even if we assume that their visions are taken to be 100% reliable, the only thing that they can possibly prove is that the man tried to kill his wife. But this movie is telling us that within a small district of Washington, D.C., they have changed the law so radically that a man can now be found guilty of murder based on evidence that only proves he was going to commit murder. This man is being arrested, charged, and sentenced for the murder of a woman who is still fucking alive! What we have here is a murder in potentia that was never actualized, and whether that was due to precognition or preventative investigation is irrelevant to one inescapable fact. A murder did not take place. Even if you agree with me 100% about what I've said so far, and even if you were as outraged as I am about all this mental retardation, you still don't seem to realize how ridiculous this is. These people are setting a crazy and dangerous legal precedent the rest of the nation can now use to convict people of crimes they were going to commit for the sake of a fucking experiment. Attempted murder is now murder. Assault with intent to kill is now murder. When you take these things to this much of an extreme, and we haven't even scratched the surface of how extreme these things have gone, this is no longer an experiment. This is an actual here and now overhaul of every legal norm our country was built upon for the sake of a fucking hypothetical. These people can successfully use the precogs to prevent crime. How is it fucking necessary to tack on not only a new term for the crime, but also a complete warping of the law, due process, and the penalty attached to that crime? Especially when this is all a fucking experiment anyway. Oh, and don't worry, we'll talk about the penalty later on. So after this enters character Danny Whitwer, who is here to audit the pre-crime system as the possibility is being brought up of this thing going nationwide. Let me make this clear. These pre-crime lunatics have been doing this for 6 years. They have been trying, convicting, and sentencing people for crimes they didn't commit for 6 years, and as we later learn, are subjecting the convicted to punishments that are tailored to this unique conviction. For 6 years, and only now, is the Department of Justice sending someone over there with a warrant to find out what these people are doing. Only now is anyone in the Department of Justice bothering to send someone to ask if this is all as batshit crazy as it sounds. And that isn't even the half of it. The Danny character is eventually taken to see the precogs, and this is what he is told.
They don't feel any pain. We keep their heads pretty well stocked with dopamine and endorphins. Plus, we maintain careful control over the serotonin levels. Don't want them to drift off into too deep a sleep. They can't be kept too awake either.
It's better if you don't think of them as human.
To which the Danny character recoils in horror after learning of this gross and blatant human rights violation. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's what someone who wasn't retarded would have done.
Why don't you cut the cute act, Danny boy, and tell me exactly what it is you're looking for? Flaws.
You have flaws! These people are practicing mad science and torturing children in order to sentence people for things they haven't done. What other kinds of flaws are you looking for? This concludes part 1 of this review, and we haven't even gotten past the premise yet. Oh, dear, sweet Lord.